so much for coming to this Q&A. We just finished a time block, and again, thank you so much for your patience. And so, let me introduce myself again one more time. I am Lynn Chi. I'm one of the volunteers here at the Awareness Film Festival. And before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and have a few people introduce themselves. If you don't mind. Are you part of the film?
I produce it with Claudius.
Okay, I didn't get your name, that's why.
Kamara.
Kamara.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, and then after that, we'll go ahead and jump into questions.
Cool.
Cool. So, go ahead.
So I'm Kamara Nisa, and I am a vegan activist. I'm one of the producers with Claudius on the film.
Carlos Sands, I'm a producer on this film, filmmaker, writer.
I'm Madeline Bernstein, and I was a talking head.
Hello everyone, I'm Kevin Mukherjee. I'm the producer and director of Who We Are One.
Okay. And so, you know, like most Q&As, you just start off with inspiration. What brought you guys to make this very beautiful, very heartfelt? I mean, when it comes to animals and understanding feelings, many people don't really see that animals are just animals. They don't feel what humans feel. But what inspired you guys to share this message to us, the audience?
Well, as a filmmaker, I wanted to do something, make the connection between animal welfare and human rights issues and the environment. And I've been gathering footage for most of my adult life about this type of subject, made a number of shorts. And then I was kind of looking for something to do, and I was actually driving down Hollywood Boulevard, and I looked to the right, and there's the Chinese theater. I looked to the left, there's the El Capitan with the talk show that he does. And then I was trying to look in the front, and I couldn't. There's a bus in front of my car. In the back of the bus, there's a little billboard that said everything starts, small. It talked about how serial killers get started by doing horrible things to animals. And there's a phone number. So I got in my cell phone, I looked around, there's no cops. So I got in the cell phone, I called the number, and I got this lady. I told her that I was interested in making a movie. And she said, yeah, or, Madeline Bernstein, she's the CEO of the place, she'll give you a call. So a few days go by, and I thought, well, she's not going to call me. Then suddenly I get a phone call. She said, hey, this is Madeline Bernstein. I didn't know her then, but now, she's my pal. And that's how we got started. We actually shot 8 hours of our documentary, of our footage, of our talking head. The original idea was to make the whole movie out of her speech. But then she started talking about FBI said this, and Mrs. Gandhi did that, and Jimmy Carter said this. Then we thought, you know what, we're going to start talking to those people to kind of back up what Madeline was initially, telling us, and that's how the movie kind of evolved. So.
Definitely. Madeline, any words of what inspired you to reach out to Kevin and say, I want to be part of this project with you, what can I do essentially?
Well,
You listen to my message.
I listen to your message and I return all calls within 48 hours. Kind of thing. Now, this has been a thing. I wasn't always in animal welfare, and I guess the origin story was probably my first day of law school, sitting in a class, and it was early morning, and I hate morning. And because my last name starts with a B, I was in the front of the room, and so all things were bad that day. And the class started. 5 minutes go in, and there's a gentleman in front of me with a guide dog, and I was hungry because it's morning, and my stomach began to growl. And every time my stomach began to growl, he hit the dog. And so, I've never been known to behave in class. I've never been known to control myself. And I said, look, it's not the dog, I'm hungry. My stomach is growling because it's a god awful time of day. And so stop hitting the dog. And he told me to go F myself. And so the next thing I said is, if you hit the dog one more time, I'm going to beat you to death with my contracts textbook. And at that point, we got yelled at, and we were kept after class. And again, first day of school, want to set a reputation right then and there. And this has always been me.
What grade were you in?
It's law school. I was a grown up. I've been like this, my whole life, bringing in animals. But I, eventually in my career found my way into animal welfare. And so when Kevin called and said, you know, what are you talking about on the back of the bus, I went into a tirade about how cruelty to animals. I used to be a prosecutor, and I could see the connection, but nobody else did. And eventually people do, and thanks to this film, hopefully more people will do. So I'm really glad I met him.
Thank you.
Amazing.
That's the whole point. You want to get the conversation started. You know, life is simple. How can we get through this journey without hurting any other human beings and ideally any other, you know, living beings?
I think when I met Kevin, I was already raw vegan. So I had been raw vegan, I think it's been like 14 years now. And it was like a no-brainer to jump on this. I remember there was somebody called me up and said, Monica Gandhi is in town, and do you have anyone to interview her? So I knew Kevin had told me about, he had just started on this journey with this documentary. And I called him up and I said, can you be there? Well, and I think it was like 20 minutes he had to get down there and just grab that interview. And he went down there sweating and just, and that was, and I mean, her interview, you've seen it, it's powerful. The story about the dodo, that's the one that captures me, that sits with me. And since then, you know, we saw it all the way through. I mean, and I have been, it's been 14 years, and